Picard Series 3. It's coming soon. We've had the big trailer and it looks pretty cool. Can this actually be third time lucky for Picard? Okay, so if you are a regular SciTrekker, you'll know I'm not a big fan of the first two seasons of Picard. They actually made me quite angry. And for both seasons, I was incredibly excited. The trailers just made the series look like it was going to be exciting, action-packed. But what we actually got was confusing, had horrible mistakes, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, and at times was not well written or executed. The first two seasons of Picard were a meandering mess at times and really left us disappointed. Even though the seasons had highs, the first episode of season 2 was absolutely fantastic. But those highs cannot take away from the very low lows. So, first of all, some of the big issues that I had with the first two seasons of Picard. And now I'm going to talk about this because I'm going to make the argument basically that I think there is a risk with Picard season 3. And that risk is that Terry Matalas, the guy that has written a lot of the Picard so far that we've seen and is now showrunning for season 3, might have listened to the fans, but potentially maybe he's listened too much. And I think there's a risk that by pandering to the fans, he might have actually painted himself into a corner. But hey, let's talk about some of those bigger problems and smaller issues from the first two seasons. Picard is an android. Now, they kind of ignored that in the rest of Picard season 2. You know, actually Q could have gone, dude, you're an android. You're a human again. But they didn't. They just pretended it didn't happen. But the whole storyline in the first season was basically that Picard was sick. He had this thing in his head that was incurable and he was going to die. And then, oh, magic. Oh, he's an android. My main problems with that. It was unnecessary. It was stupid. And now Picard is basically really dead. He is now an android. He is a copy. He's not actually Jean-Luc Picard anymore. Now, the fans pointed this out to the creators of Picard. So in season 2, they just kind of ignored it. And in season 3, I'm certain they will continue to ignore it. Series 1 villain. Now, the whole thing about season 1 was this squid thing was going to come through this portal and was going to destroy the universe. That's what the Romulans were terrified of. That was the whole reason why the fleet turned up, and the whole thing with the androids and the whole thing. The whole storyline was building up to this incredibly terrifying villain. What we then got was a bit of a hole in space and some tentacles came out. Come on. That whole finale was incredibly underwhelming. We had those two enormous fleets facing off against each other. The Romulan fleet looked kind of skinny, and the Federation fleet was copy and pasted. It was badly put together. They didn't even shoot at each other. There was this opportunity for this amazing space battle that they just didn't bother with. And then, obviously, we then had the squiddy things. The whole episode and the whole season 1 fizzled out into nothing. Another big problem with season 1, there was no Federation in it. But we got to see some of the Federation in season 2. But that now takes us into the issues with season 2. The whole season was an utter waste of time. Now, I actually would argue that there's only 2 or 3 episodes worth of actual story in that entire season, but they stretched it out for 10. We had this whole trying to understand why Picard was the person he is. But to be honest, it was forgettable and kind of stupid. The episode where his dad was then his shrink, it was supposed to be dramatic and it just didn't work. It missed completely. The whole thing with Jurati as the Borg Queen, we all twigged around halfway through the second episode. And the whole actual series, if you think about it, was a complete waste of time. When Jurati appeared as the Borg Queen, she'd already had the conversation with Picard on the Stargazer's ready room. The conversation basically was that Picard was tempted to listen to the Borg. Now, 7 of 9 was kill, kill, kill. Picard was, this could be the strongest ally the Federation has ever made. We could actually be on the precipice of an amazing thing. Now, don't get me wrong, the more incredible an opportunity, generally speaking, the higher the risk. But Picard was willing to listen. If Jurati, Borg Queen Jurati, had opened hailing frequencies and gone, dude, it's me, I'm from the past, I'll explain in a minute, we've got this thing to go and sort. Crack on. Picard would have listened. So the whole reason for Q taking him back in time to make him explore his feelings and blah, 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 and make him maybe then listen to Jurati and not blow up the ships was a complete waste of time because he was already willing to listen to Jurati. So all of season 2 is a waste of time. Also, Q, we were promised, and they teased us, that they might actually explain the entire Q storyline. From Encounter at Farpoint, Q has said that humanity was on trial and that actually Picard specifically was on trial as well. They, in the trailer and in the first episode of season 2, they teased us again with, he says, you're always on trial. This is the final part. This is the last stage of the story not taken. They tease us again and again with that they're going to explain the whole Q storyline. And then they just don't. Q wanted to say goodbye to Picard. That final scene was incredible when Q does say goodbye. But the whole time Q is in the past, does he actually do anything? It's actually very confusing. Unless they're going to explain something about this in season 3, I don't actually understand what he was doing with Adam Sung. So it all seemed to be a bit pointless. There's a couple of little problems as well in the first 2 seasons of Picard, and these things just, as a Trekkie, they shouldn't irritate me, but they do. In the first episode of Picard Season 2, there's this amazing panning shot of the Golden Gate Bridge. And on the Golden Gate Bridge, there isn't a road anymore, because why would there be? Nobody drives cars. But instead, there's an array of solar panels. Why? This is a world of antimatter power systems and fusion reactors. Why on earth would they use solar panels on any industrial scale anyway? You would maybe have some on your roof where, you're just powering your lights and you don't really need anything else. You don't need to be hooked up to a grid, especially assuming that solar panels would be way better in the future than they are today. But why would they have an industrial solar panel thing on a tourist attraction and would be a national treasure? The Golden Gate Bridge. Now, I think the creators just did that because they thought it would look cool and they were maybe being a bit, like, oh, solar panels and global warming and things. But it doesn't make any sense. So don't do it. Another thing, and forgetting the fact that we've seen the Golden Gate Bridge in Star Trek before and it's not got solar panels on. But anyway, and another thing, and this is maybe a bit more of one, and I really don't understand why they didn't do this. All the starships that we see in Season 2 Picard, the Excelsior and the Stargazer, in fact, don't have a alphabetic designation. They're not the Stargazer A or the Excelsior B or the Excelsior C or whatever, like the Enterprise, Enterprise A, Enterprise B, Enterprise D. We know that the Stargazer is a new vessel, first in its class. It should have an alphabetic designation, but it doesn't. But none of the starships do. Why? Why in this time period, all of a sudden, they stopped doing that? It's just these little details that kind of bug me. And if anybody out there can explain it, I'd love to understand. My biggest problem and my biggest fear, though, Picard Season 3, is that I know Tara Metalis is really working hard to do an amazing show. Nobody creating the show wants to do a bad television show. And lots of people that have already seen the first few episodes are saying that this is really the Star Trek that we deserve and the Star Trek that the Next Generation crew deserve. This is going to be the final hurrah for Picard, even though he's already said he might carry on. But I'm a bit concerned that potentially Terry Matalas and the other people that have written this series have listened to the fans and have listened to all these complaints that I've just mentioned. But while trying to give the audience what they want, could they have gone too far? Now, by this, I mean, I'm a bit worried about the fact that Moriarty is in this series, even though we all sort of went, oh my God, it's Moriarty. why and how is he in this series is going to have to be very clever. Because if it's not, it's just going to be stupid. And it's just going to feel like they've shoehorned in a character from the next generation for the sake of it, rather than it being actually relevant to a coherent story. We have Lore, and from the new trailer, it doesn't look like Lore's necessarily the villain we've come to know. Now, is it Lore or is it B4? We can't be sure. That rhymes. It didn't mean to, but hey, it did. Now, to be honest, from what we've seen from the next trailer, to me, it makes more sense that it's actually B4. But if it is Lore, he's different and he has emotion. And that's going to have to also be explained in a very clever way. Now, they're keeping a lot of secrets. There's a lot of things we don't understand, but we know there is a big threat, and that threat is putting the entire Federation potentially at risk. Now, everything looks like it's going to be an action-packed, exciting series. And to be honest, it looks like we're going to have a lot of space battles, which makes me very happy. Again, if you are a regular SciTrek, you'll know I am a whore for a space battle. Oh man, I love it. It's awesome. So if they've got lots and lots of space battles, I'm going to enjoy the series. But I'm really hoping that while trying to keep all of us fans happy, they haven't gone too far. And I have to admit, third time lucky is me being really, really optimistic. I'm really hoping they can pull something out of the bag here because, first series, disappointed. Second series, really disappointed. If they disappoint me again, I might actually have to turn my back on Star Trek altogether. And that would be a massive shame, considering this has been a franchise that's been with me since I was about 10. They have done a lot of damage to the franchise of Star Trek in the last few years. I'm just hoping that Picard Season 3 can repair some of that damage. I'd love to know, though, guys, what you think. Are you willing to give them a third chance? Or are you not even going to bother with Picard Season 3? I'd love to know exactly what you think. As always, if you are new to the channel, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. It really helps us out. And if you want to become a fully fledged SciTrekker, please consider hitting that join button. There are links in the description for our 9 Chevron Stargate website, our merchandise channel, our sister channel, SciTrek Sides, and lots of other things. So please go and check that out. As always, please stay safe. And I'll see you next time.